Remember, some of us are of a certain age, and I feel sure you probably, with me, remember, why did God make you? God made me to know Him, to love Him, to serve Him in this world, and to be happy with Him forever in heaven. When we were young, there was a catechism. I'm sorry, Adam, I'll try it. It's hard. I'm not a person who can stand still very well. But at any rate, when we were young, the church had an answer for every question. In fact, the church made up the questions. We didn't even have to come up with them. Today, it seems like all we have are questions. But it's a perfect response. And I think those of us who grew up in that age, in those days, and memorized this repeatedly, year after year, would say that it is a great mission statement for our lives. My talk is about hospitality being the door that opens to a vibrant parish. And I call it, our church is kind of a big deal. Recently, at a small hospital nearby, a baby was born. This was a major event in a hospital with only about 30 beds. The priest, the pastor, was there visiting another sick person and heard about it because it was the talk of the entire hospital, you can imagine. And he happened to know the family, so he went down to where the family was gathered and he walked up to the dad, the new dad, and the dad was looking through a glass at his little baby who was screaming her head off. Red and just puffed up, and the priest thought, oh, this dad probably thinks something's wrong. And he turned to the young dad and he said, son, this is just what babies do. Don't, she's just fine. And he turned and he said, Father, I know she's fine, but she's mad as a hornet. And the father said, whoa, why would she be mad? He said, well, wouldn't you be mad? 1 minute you're with God, and 9 months later you're in Georgia? By the way, I'm from Gainesville, University of Florida town. We play South Carolina, University of South Carolina this weekend. So part of my prayers are that we all do well. But the reality is that dad turned to the priest and said, her mother and I have to make sure she doesn't forget having been with God. And Father, you do too. The church has to make sure she doesn't forget where she's come from. Because if she does, she'll be a goner. And that's what we're about. We want everyone to remember where we came from. And although, we might not exactly know what heaven might have been like, we all do want to go there. And so the church really is kind of a big deal. Stewardship is what parishioners is. Stewardship, frankly, is not about what parishioners do for the church. We get that backwards. Good stewardship is what the church does for the people, for God's people, God's children. It's really us, we the leaders of the church, who are called to be good stewards of the great gift God has given us in this spectacular, awesome faith. Faith in Jesus Christ, of course, but faith in his presence in the Holy Eucharist, that his body and blood mingle with our body and blood. And our Mass doesn't end. We take it with us. It is a big deal, for sure, and a great blessing that we have this faith. We need to help more people remember who Jesus was and what his life, death, and resurrection were about. Everywhere he went, he loved people, all people, without restrictions, without fears of touching even lepers. He went to the suffering, the sighing, the crying, and the dying. And everywhere he went, his love made them whole again. Happy again. He filled them with food and with wine and with good news. Do we welcome people into our parishes as openly as Jesus did? Because it's an important question. Some parishes are thriving because they are welcoming. And some parishes are struggling because they're not so welcoming. We are the leaders of the church. You are the leaders of the church in South Carolina. There are 96 parishes and 21 missions and shrines in your diocese. You have about 1,274 registered Catholics per priest. When you hear that and take it in, you realize how essential your participation, the participation of the people of God, truly is if we're going to build God's kingdom. There are not enough priests to serve all the people. So when we say our church is kind of a big deal, the truth is it's up to the parishioners, especially parish leaders like you, to make it happen. Over 5,000 people gathered to enjoy listening to Jesus and to see his miracles. They all probably brought food for lunch, knowing this was going to be a very entertaining day. But it was getting late, and the disciples realized, it's getting to the dinner hour, and these people, in fact, we, your disciples, we've eaten all the food we brought. Send them home. But Jesus wasn't finished with them yet. So he told everybody to just make themselves comfortable. And 5 loaves and 2 fish fed over 5,000 people. Think about it. The disciples thought there wasn't enough. Jesus made plenty where there was very little. I often tell people Jesus described heaven as a great wedding feast. And one thing for sure, when we get there, we are never going to run out of good wine because he's there. And he will make more for us. Remembering the wine at the wedding feast and the food for the 5,000 plus, and with the benefit of our faith, do we get the message? Jesus makes plenty where it seems like there's very little. That's a lesson that's important for us to remember When we believe and share that good news, we realize our church is kind of a big deal. The gospel of Jesus Christ is the good news of abundance. So many times these days, we hear people express their fears. There's not enough money. There's not enough time. There's not enough space. There's not enough to share. Jesus is quite clear. There is plenty. Yes, there's man-made scarcities in this world, but very little of that affects us directly. We have been blessed. And thank God every day we live where we do and how we do. We are a church, a Jesus church, so we simply must proclaim abundance, not scarcity, with words of wisdom and moreover by our parochial action. St. Francis, who, if you go to your diocesan website, whoever puts that together likes to quote St. Francis. St. Francis said, always preach the gospel. Sometimes use words. My friends, brothers and sisters, there's plenty of all we need to generate a high energy, dynamic, catalytic, powerful church of fully engaged parishioners. Simply put, we're here today because we do believe. Even if sometimes, like the centurion, we believe and pray God will help our non-belief. Right after Jesus fed the 5,000 plus, he had to admonish his disciples for their lack of faith. Nevertheless, we're here 2,000 years later because those lackluster disciples changed the world with our faith. We can do that too. Our church is kind of a big deal. We are the leaders, and it's up to us to fiercely set our church free from complacency, free from comparisons, free from bitterness, free from dependency. We leaders have to be the healing Jesus sends to our wounded parishioners. There's no insecurity in the gospel. Jesus tells us countless times not to be afraid. And he will provide. He provided the food, he provided the wine, he provides the faith, and he will provide all we need to be our very best selves. We are the church that thrives, but it has to happen because of relationships at the parish level. Again and again, feel it, think it, believe it. Our church is a big deal because we know what God's love is like. And our church is kind of a big deal because even today, seated among us are people who don't look like me, don't think like me, don't believe everything I believe, and don't have Philadelphia accents. But we sit at the tables together. And when we sit at the table together, we realize we have more in common than the things that divide us. When we engage in one another's life, we understand that God's love is the baseline on which all of us stand. So even if there are places where we differ, we find that the values of Jesus, who is God's love personified after all, his values enable us to find our place at the table of plenty. People approach our churches for weekend masses in various conditions. Some come out of duty. Some with a bounce in their step, they're in the zone, life's going great, and they bring their joy. Others are troubled. Something's going on, and they came to pray for a miracle. Some come out of curiosity because they weren't raised with any religion and feel something missing in their lives. Some recently moved to your area. All who come are looking for a place they belong. Many people are moving into our parishes. I was just talking to a guy from Rock Hill. He said it's growing like crazy. I know that Charleston's growing like crazy. We just realize that the highways aren't built for the number of people who've come in quickly. So few areas in our country are experiencing such population growth. My first pastor, after I was ordained, Father Julian, always said that the Catholic Church in any town has 3 chances to bring in a family that just moved to town. They'll give you 3 tries, or if there's 3 churches, maybe each church will get a try. After that, if you don't have them, they're going to find someplace else to go. It might be other churches, it might be restaurants, it could be golf courses or entertainment. The question is, will they go fishing or will they come to our churches? Welcoming newly registered parishioners with a dinner and sitting with them to learn their interests generates connections for people who have recently moved and don't know anyone locally. Parish leaders may give a short presentation introducing them to various parish ministries, groups, and social opportunities, showing the newcomers the church and the facilities also adds to their feeling of ownership. It's great if the priest can stop by and just say a welcome, but this is a peer ministry. We want people to connect with one another and form friendships with other parishioners. Radical hospitality is our first priority. Whether Gentile or Jew, male or female, slave or free, as St. Paul says, all are welcome. Ideally, each parish would find people who smile and are happy and will greet the people who come, not with hand sanitizers, but with great smiles and great welcomes, and ask people how they are. Most will just say fine and walk on. Once in a while, there'll be somebody who actually will have something on their minds, and these people have to be good listeners, and listen and offer to pray with them. It's also wonderful if the priest greets people before or after Masses to take the newcomer to the priest and introduce them. Most of the time, he'll be very nice but won't remember them. But once in a while, the Holy Spirit works, and the priest will remember them the next time he sees them. And what an impression that makes. I remember one Sunday, maybe 20 years ago, a guy in my parish who's a greeter, is great for that. In fact, he heads a ministry we call Connectors. Brought 3 different couples for me to meet. Meanwhile, other people are telling me their stories. Anyhow, by some grace, I remembered one couple, I remembered their names the next week. Hi Ray, hi Karen, great to see you again. That's all it took. They signed up. And today, they're among my best friends. We travel together, we have dinner at least once a week together, and it just shows you how you can make, simple gestures can make a big imprint. My good friends from Jacksonville brought their 10-year-old twin sons to Mass at Queen of Peace in Gainesville. We're 2 hours away one weekend. I was so sure that they would be impressed by the music, by so many altar servers, and by my spell-binding homily. I couldn't wait to ask them how they enjoyed Mass. And one of the boys said, I never saw so many donuts in all my life. Jesus served fish and bread to the thousands and made wine for the wedding guests. Serving free coffee and donuts generates socializing and hospitality. And no offense to Father Castillo, I think even if the coffee's lousy. People will enjoy each other and not even hardly taste the coffee. If people get to meet and enjoy time with other parishioners, they have no reason to go spend their money at Krispy Kreme or Dunkin' Donuts or wherever. The people can relax with friends at church. If there's no fundraisers soliciting their money for cakes or chances or carnivals or magazines or candy or cookie sales, they can just relax and feel less pressured after Mass. And the money they save can also be given to the parish church. I believe in tithing. That is giving 10% of my income off the top. But I also know that we can help it along by being conscious that parishioners' abilities to be generous are limited. The less annoyed by all the nickel and diming, the more they will relax and enjoy coming to church. And I assure you, after 24 years of doing this, we have never lost money by offering stewardship-supported worship and hospitality without all the peripheral asking for money. People actually like giving to their parishes, but they don't like feeling like they're in a flea market when they leave Mass. That being said, the toughest resistance I've endured over the 24 years of pastoring was convincing people we are better off without fundraisers. The older Knights of Columbus were the worst. Eventually, they split and formed a chapter at a neighboring parish. But then, amazingly enough, their sons and other younger men joined the Knights. And today, they are the muscle we need when we need some cleanup, we need to build a new playground, anything else we need, they're ready and they're there for us. And they, just as the tradition went, they offer the Mother's Day full breakfast and the Father's Day full breakfast. There's no charge, no baskets for donations, there's no nothing else. The parish covers the cost. And our Knights at Queen of Peace are thriving, good-spirited, and well-connected with our parish. If we're not nickel and diming people, we will see the dollars increase, not decrease. I know few of our churches were built with hospitality in mind. There's not often room in the narthex for donuts, coffee, and socializing. And if people leave the church, they are unlikely to pass their parking lot to enter another building. Before we had our church, when we were still using a multi-purpose building, we started using religious ed classrooms and buying those little tents you can buy, gazebo-type tents for outside the church. And when we started to build our church, the people were adamant they wanted air-conditioned space for hospitality. One parishioner, an older physician, pledged $1 million over time toward our church building because we said adding the hospitality space would be expensive. Queen of Peace has over 3,500 square feet that are used for hospitality on weekends with coffee and donuts, but also for luncheons after funerals, evening classes, afternoon bridge games, retreats, deanery meetings, and many other events. And we have closed-circuit TVs so that the overflow crowds on Christmas and Easter have a comfortable place to sit, and if that seems, and they can watch the Mass on TV, and if that seems impossible, you're the leaders. If you believe it's important, if you believe it's valuable, you can make it happen. You have to believe. And you have to trust God. Your parish may, maybe your church was built at a time where there were more people coming, and it's not full on Sundays. There's a possibility, I mean, just off the top of my head, but you could glass in a portion of the back of the church, back maybe 25% even of the church, and make that a hospitality space. Not, you know, and then of course, everybody to move closer to the altar anyhow. And then that space can be used on Easter and Christmas and First Communions when you need extra seating because it's glass and they can see into the church. There are creative ways to make hospitality important to your parish, and it isn't. You don't have to make it important. It is important. You have to believe and expect miracles, and I believe architects can help us. Like I said, Jesus provides plenty even where there seems to be very little. And if our efforts are to draw people to Him, we can expect miracles. And our church is kind of a big deal. I want a moment more on the hospitality thing. We serve a luncheon after every funeral mass in our hospitality area. Sometimes people who work but want to do something, some kind of ministry, will provide a casserole or deviled eggs. I one time just said to people, the whole reason I became a priest is because I like deviled eggs. So there's always deviled eggs, and there's a lot of times it's food they pick up at Publix or the grocery store pre-made and drop off, but there's always plenty of food for the people who've come to the funeral. And the funeral directors have no problem with it. They get to eat lunch before they go to the cemetery. I've been at various civic functions and dinner parties and other things where non-Catholics happen to also be present, and they will go out of their way and come to me and say how impressed they were that we had that funeral luncheon when they came to a funeral at Queen of Peace. It's amazing. I believe our hospitality areas can be used in countless ways, and they're significant enough to consider. The most significant problem with stewardship is that due to mistaken priorities, people associate it with programs to raise the offertory, as we've heard in a couple of the talks earlier. If we say time, talent, and treasure, and we offer nothing for time and talent, then the reality is, it's as Amanda said at the beginning, it's sugar-coated asking for money. That is not good stewardship on our part, and it invites people to grow cynical, and definitely it's not the way to holiness. True stewardship is not about getting people to do more or give more to the parish. Stewardship is about what the parish does for the people. We leaders dedicate our time and talent to draw people into a relationship with the living Jesus Christ and deeper and more confident faith in Him. Frankly, if we bring people together for any kind of fellowship, their relationships with other parishioners will deepen into friendships as well. Parishioners will begin to think of their church when they plan their weeks and their budgets. When I first took up my responsibilities at Queen of Peace, the parishioners at the time thought that good stewardship meant you lock the doors after every Mass and then open them the next time you have Mass so that you can save money on the electricity. My vision was there would be cars in the parking lot every day and every evening of the week. And I asked them, what is our purpose if it's not to bring people into church rather than keeping them out? If we're not looking for ways and acting on them to bring people toward Jesus Christ, we are irrelevant. How many times have you heard people say they were raised Catholic, but they're not interested? The ones who, when asked their religion, say none, are not necessarily saying they wouldn't join a church if they felt welcome. If you want to know why so many people can walk away from the Holy Eucharist and go to an evangelical, non-denominational church, it's because they feel those churches are a community that cares. And we are a community that wants them to jump through hoops and give more money. I think you could agree. People don't care what you know until they know you care about them. Countless ministries offered in those non-denominational churches, and many are offered in our neighboring Catholic parishes. If you like some ideas, just call and ask the most active parishes for their ministry booklets, or get a friend to bring you one from their non-denominational or Protestant church. Please don't accept the excuse that it wouldn't work in our parish. You'll be surprised that ministries you in a million years are not in the least bit interested in, or will be of interest to other people. Those ministries are working wherever you got the information from. My only caveat would be that you avoid divisive organizations that want separate masses and private devotions, and try to find ministries and programs that build your whole community. My point is, when we're bringing people to our campus every day, our church is kind of a big deal. And by the way, if you're strictly about finances, you would certainly have to agree that if people are coming to your campus through the week, they are less likely to be spending their entertainment dollars at the movies or designer beer places. People need friends in their lives, and if they find them at church, and they do find them at those non-denominational churches, they will be more inclined to offer a portion of their hard-earned money to support their Catholic church, because the attitude that's formed is our church is a big deal. Now this is interesting. Nearly all ministries an active parish offers are peer-generated. That means they are low cost or no cost. In nearly every case, a chairperson or one or two interested volunteers get the ministry started, and it grows from there. When I started, I got a ministry book from a neighboring evangelical church, and I took their book, picked 30 of their ministries, changed the words here and there so they sounded more Catholic, and published them as our parish ministry book. The only ministries we had at the time were liturgical ministries and religious ed classes on Sundays. But whenever anybody called the office to inquire about one of those other ministries, I'd meet with them and make them the chairpersons and invite them to find other people. And believe it or not, it worked. And as I said a moment ago, imagine, believe, and expect miracles. When I retired, there were cars in the parking lot day and evening, 7 days per week, and 85 active ministries. The pastor or a ministry leader designates, meets with the chairpersons of each of those ministries once a month to be aware of what's going on and to provide support, guidance, encouragement, and gratitude. Always, the pastor keeps informed so he gets the bragging rights. Different parishes have different demographics and different personalities. So what appeals to one may not appeal so much to another. As I said, it took tenacity, persistence, faith, and an ability to wish those elder Knights of Columbus all the best when they formed a separate parish, a chapter at a separate parish. But our parish, without them, became a stewardship parish as a way of life. Every one of our parishes has Catholics living within their boundaries who are not coming to church. I'd ask every active Catholic, isn't it our purpose to bring more people to Jesus Christ? Aren't we expected to be evangelizing? If we only brought back a fraction of the Catholics who have drifted away, our churches would fill and our parishes would thrive. If your parish would have several no-cost parish stewardship-supported socials through the year, parishioners could invite friends to these and other fun events, like a Valentine's party, or Oktoberfest, or Christmas tree lighting, even a free pizza and beer and movie night. When neighbors and friends discover how much fun we Catholics are, they'll look forward to more contacts. We always provide free babysitting. These social events are opportunities to invite, quote, former Catholics, family, neighbors, friends to enjoy the social event. and after they find they enjoy our company, the Mass will grow more inviting and less intimidating to them as well. Eventually, I know, because I've heard the testimony in RCIA, that people are deciding to come into the Catholic Church or get confirmed because they found people who are happy here. You know, it's not Disneyland, but wouldn't it be nice if people came to our churches because they wanted to be there and invite their friends? Your diocese has this quote from St. Francis on your website. Start by doing what is necessary, then do what is possible, and suddenly you are doing the impossible. Well, as you can tell, I could go on and on and on. But basically the bottom line is our church really is a big deal. And can I have an amen?
Amen.
Great. Thank you.